Welcome everybody. In this video I'll be telling you why I'm changing my expectations and also estimations for NIO. So welcome back if you are an existing subscriber, and if you're new to the channel, also welcome to you. I would really appreciate if you would subscribe, and if we can get this channel to 50k subscribers by the end of the year. That's just a personal goal that I have for the channel. And now let's speak about goals for NIO and also the business case and my personal investment expectations for the company here. So we have new numbers, right? We've got the monthly numbers now for October, slightly above the 20k. And this triggered me to make some changes of how I see the company going forward, also in conjunction with some of the commentary out there. So let's go into that. First of all, I always put up this chart, which is basically the run rate adjusted by business days. As you know, for example, in October, there's always the golden week, or more or less always. It's always a little bit different timing. However, you know, there are different days where people can buy cars, or also producing cars. There are off times and so on. This is impacting the real output. And so I'm adjusting for that. And we can see based on that this October has been only the second highest ever since NIO is producing cars, but the trajectory long term is just going up. However, I think the expectations before the monthly numbers have been a little bit higher, despite the fact that we basically only had like 3 weeks instead of 4 weeks for delivery. And that's, I think, mainly coming from the fact that people are comparing to what competitors are doing, mainly Xiaopeng and Seeker, right? So I did another video the other day around my Onvo expectations, and then the other one about how Onvo is scaling a little bit slower than those two competitors like Xiaopeng and Seeker. And if you haven't watched it, go watch it. But the bottom line is basically that Seeker and Xiaopeng are selling through existing sales channels. And I do think it's a harder task that NIO is approaching, with going into new infrastructure, new sales engines, new sales channels, being a standalone brand. And therefore, I thought, that's kind of holding Onvo back for the beginning. And I said it's a tremendous, difficult task to establish this new brand, because nobody knows Onvo. Very few people actually know about NIO. Maybe NIO is now getting more established, right? So that's why I'm basically separating the other ones from NIO and Onvo, and say that this is a different approach. And therefore I understand why the Onvo ramp is maybe a little bit slower than compared to them, which, those competitors managed to sell 10k in the first month, which NIO and Onvo didn't. Okay, now why I'm saying that I'm changing my expectations now going forward, and also my estimations, is that before Onvo came out, I said NIO is the main thing, and NIO will still be the main thing to watch going forward. So in my business case, which I've uploaded for the patrons, is that my estimations, which I think were quite conservative, for example, for this year, I'm getting to a full year sales number around 223,000. And I think lots of people, actually, even before those numbers in October, they had much higher estimations, because they said, Onvo is going to be the big thing, and it's going to be on top of that, and it's going to really make the sales numbers already explode by this year. And I said, hold on a bit. I think it's going to be a challenge to scale Onvo quickly. And so I had quite conservative numbers for Onvo as such, even so low that people were kind of saying, like, Marcel, you're way too low on these numbers. It's not going to happen. It's going to be much more. But now what's happening is, and we've seen NIO executives coming out and speaking about that, is that maybe my personal estimations and expectations towards the NIO brand have been too high. Now, we've sold around 16k NIO cars in October. So that's year over year. It's just a very slight increase. So it has been 16k last year. I think this year they sold 600 more or something. So maybe 4% year over year increase. So that's not a lot, right? So it seems a little bit like this NIO, the NIO branded cars themselves are not growing that much currently. Are currently a little bit peaking out, maybe even so. And that has to do with something that NIO is seemingly doing actively, which is scaling back some of the pushy incentives in order to make NIO more profitable. So the NIO brand itself, they mentioned that currently they are on the bottom line making hundreds millions RMB worth more on the bottom line in terms of profitability for the NIO brand, because they have scaled back some of the incentives, but that is costing them a little bit growth for the NIO brand. Now, before Onvo came out with my personal expectations and business case, I said, there's NIO is still the main story, and I'm expecting them to do well, and also, maybe be on this 30% year-over-year growth trajectory. And I'm not calling on Onvo too much in the beginning to help with, maybe next year. But now that NIO is coming out and saying actively that they're looking to moderately grow with NIO, I think that projection has kind of changed, because if NIO is not playing a big role also in part of the growth, because they are now looking to focus more on the profitability of this brand, which, if you think about it, kind of makes sense, because this already has like the higher scale, so the unit costs and so on are much better developed, and that's where they can actually make the improvements on the margins. And instead of growing that one, this part too much, the NIO brand, they're now saying they're going more towards the Onvo sales, right? And so with that, I think the Onvo sales are coming in now slightly below the 5K, which they pointed out that they're going to do in October. So in my opinion, that's still pretty much what they said, right? And now they're aiming for 10K in December, which is a little bit of a stretch, but it's not impossible at all. So I would expect personally that they are going to meet that. And if they're going to meet that, then I think it will kind of outpace the expectations that I personally had for Onvo for this year. And all in all, that might mean that my overall number of around 223K annual deliveries might still be reached, but it's not so much coming from NIO, and we've got slower growth with NIO numbers, but the Onvo brand might be able to catch up already in a way that it's kind of, pushing this volume and the revenues on this side. So it's not too bad if you think about that we have now one profitability driver with the established brand and one growth driver, because Onvo is certainly at a stage that now the margins can't be great, the unit economics, the scale isn't great, so it's going to be costly anyways to scale it in this point in time. But if the main growth is coming from that brand going forward, then we have got both a growth driver and a profitability driver, if they're not investing too much in making the NIO brand grow much faster at this point in time. And that might have something to do with the strategy of making those two brands stand alone, and also hopefully not getting too much cannibalization between the two. If they are going to compete more on the NIO brand with incentives and so on, that would kind of play a little bit with the brand positioning of NIO too much. And maybe they're now at a point where they say, okay, we're confident in scaling Onvo and having the growth there. Now, regarding that, I'm hearing a couple of anecdotes. It's nothing more than that, but on social media, for example, there has been a live stream from Onvo. In the comments, people have been asking, when do you finally deliver my car? I've heard in my Patreon community from people who live on the ground in China that some of their friends have actually switched and deleted or erased their Onvo down payment and switched to another car brand which had an immediate delivery. Sometimes that's fueled by incentives that are currently available, and people just want to get the car as fast as possible. I'm aware that this might not be the case with a NIO car or some other very unique cars, but the thing is with Onvo, this is just a mass market brand seller, I'm not sure if people are willing to wait for a car as that when it's all about affordability and getting myself from A to B. Yes, it's got some USPs like battery swapping and so on, which makes it stand out and unique. But I think for a large part of the population that's willing to buy a car like that, they might just care about a good deal and to get the car as fast as possible. So this tells me that also there seems to be some ramp up problems on the manufacturing side with Onvo, that people are ordering, but they are not getting their cars as fast as they wish for. And there have been also some occasions where there have been problems with the color and the trim and stuff like that, where there have been confused orders and deliveries and such. So these are the pains which I initially talked about, why I said, lower your expectations on Onvo in the beginning. It's going to be very tough to scale that, but it's maybe not so much about the order intake and that this is the bottleneck right now, but maybe also these early innings of getting a new organization up and running, having the processes in place and getting the cars to the people as fast as possible and as efficient as possible. So that's going to be the main challenge. And that's why I'm changing now also my outlook and say, look, if NIO is going to be that less growing brand, we're still hopefully going to get to my personal estimations there, but it might be coming more from Onvo, and that's been signaled by management now strategically that is becoming a more important factor for growth. And I have to be honest, that hasn't been my expectations going into the Onvo brand launch for the beginning, but that seems to be the case now. In fact, if they are saying they're not investing too much in marketing NIO at this point in time in a way that it would hurt the bottom line. So it's a little bit of a mix here of a takeaway. How do you judge this strategic shift by NIO? And let me know what you think about that. Thanks for watching. See you in my next videos.